So it'll come to order. First off, my apologies. This is probably the second time I've held us off late, and I'm sorry about holding you late. We try to be fairly timely around here. One point in my career, I spent a lot of time sitting here waiting for the Senate to come in. I know what it's like to sit out there, so we'll try not to do that to you again. Roll call.
Roll call, day 2, February 13th, 2024. Anderson. Baldwin. Barlow. Beitman. Boner.
Excused.
Boner. Bouchard. Brennan.
Here.
Case.
Present.
Cooper.
Here.
Dockstetter.
Here.
Ellis. French.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Guru.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Hutchings.
Here.
Ide.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Kinski.
Here.
Kolb.
Present.
Landon.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
McEwen.
Here.
Nethercott. Pappas.
Here.
Rothfuss. Salazar.
Here.
Schuler.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Steinmetz.
Here.
President Driscoll.
Here.
31 present.
Have a quorum. Prayer by Pastor Sean Sells, Calvary Chapel.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, as we gather before you today, I give thanks to you for our national, state, and local governments. I thank you for each of the legislators who are here serving today, as well as for the staffers who work tirelessly behind the scenes. I ask that our senators would work together today to lead the citizens of the state of Wyoming into a tranquil and quiet lifestyle. They would allow us to live a godly and in a dignified way. Father, you've taught us that governing authorities were established by you. I help those authorities to remember that and also remind the citizens of this state of that as well, so that we can live up to our responsibility to be submitted to our government as we submit to you. Remind our legislators that they're responsible for punishing evil, but also for praising those who do right. Lord, our state is filled with people created in your image, but with varying opinions, backgrounds, experiences, faiths, politics, and yet we're praying that you would grant us the ability to live at peace and have a state of great welfare. Father, above all, I pray for your divine wisdom. As decisions are debated and voted on today, I would ask that we wouldn't be those who would not have because we did not ask. Lord, would you bless each of these legislators as they serve you in this state today? I pray these things in the name of my great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Senator Ellis, please pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Reading, correction, and approval of journal.
Mr. President, your journal committee reports that the journal of February 12, 2024 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
No doctor of the day today, no nurse of the day today, so everybody be careful going up and down stairs and doing things. Today in Wyoming history, in 1890, the Northwestern and Elkhorn Railroad announced it would be extending its line to Sundance, Wyoming. Home does not exist. Don't tell anyone your plan. Quote for the day: don't tell anyone your plans. Instead, show them your results. That's pretty appropriate for the Senate. Introduction, reading, and reference. Yep. Oh, we have an introduction of Rand True for student page. And Rand is comes out of honor roll freshman, sophomore year, varsity letter for Alpine. We're up here in Senator Dockstetter's district. He ought to be doing this introduction probably. He's from Casper. So why does it say Alpine here? Alpine skiing. So it is not Dockstetter. Now, hey, Hey, Randy, you probably have to come up here and fix this. I'm doing this about as bad as you can. Volunteer for the following organizations or project: Our Savior's Lutheran Church Food Pantry, Boys and Girls Club Christmas Annual Gift Program, Wreaths Across America, Wreath Layer and Event Volunteer, Food for Thought Weekend and Food Bag Program, Love in Action Christmas Project, the Wyoming Hunger Initiative, an Acolyte Reader, Member, and Confirmand at Our Savior's Lutheran Church. Been working at City Brew. Comes from a great family and a great group of people. It just soaked in on me who you actually are, Rand, so. So would you like to step up and have a few words, Rand?
Yes,
Please, absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm more than happy to be holding this position. I wasn't expecting to give a speech today. I hope we have a good session. I don't know what to say.
That's good.
Okay.
You know,
All right, all right.
And that's mine and you. And I really apologize. Which is that, I know your parents pretty well. That's pretty sad. So thank you. Let's thank you again. Where are we at? Is there another cot? I can't see you behind the flower.
Yes, I were. Mr. President, thank you. Point of order with Rand. Rand, if you could stand up and please share with the Senate the wonderful story of your family's history and the art we currently have in the Senate. Rand's middle name happens to be Tupper, as well as the artist on the panels you see in the four corners of this room. And so Rand, if you could share with us your family history concerning your family and how special it is for us to have you here in the Senate surrounded by this beautiful artwork.
So I am named after my great uncle, Alan Tupper True, who was a very prestigious painter for a lot of the Mountain West. He, like Senator Nethercott mentioned, he did paint these 4 portraits in the corners. He also painted a majority of the Brown Palace murals and did the tiling on the Hoover Dam, I believe. And it's a very prestigious name, but it's like a little bit of, I don't let the pressure get to me about it. But yeah, I am more than grateful for the lineage and the history that my name carries. And it's truly an honor to hold the middle and last name of a great painter for my family. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mr. President.
Clear case.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's a little bit more than that too, Mr. President. The bucking horse on the license plate was also designed by Alan Tupper True at the request of then Secretary of State Lester Hunt. And in addition, the president of the Senate, the year before I came, but Senator Scott served with him, was Deemer True, who is also Rand's great uncle. So, wow, what a family. And you see there, you drive across the state and you see True Rig number 47, you know, with an arrow pointing like 20 miles to nowhere. And you appreciate what this family's done for Wyoming. Thank you, sir.
The arrow on the other side from the True Ranch 47 is True Rig number 47 pointing the other way. So we love the history in Wyoming. So this to me today was very special. I had no inkling of the tie of any of this for me, and I'm a history nut. I had no inkling of any of it. So I thank all of you for it, because it's the history of this institution texts back in every direction. As you walk into the rooms, you look at the artwork, you look at the things. It's part of what makes this an incredible special spot. So thanks for the history, Senator True, Senator Nethercott. Kind of made my day. I'm sitting up here with a grin on my face. So thank you. We are back to consent. So we're back to consent list. We've still got one more run of committee bills here. And then after that, we're going to go into individual bills. The individual bills will not be consent lists. They'll come up. So those that I talked to yesterday, I went desk to desk. Be prepared because your bills are going to come in under standard procedure. So be prepared. If you're not, it's okay to ask for it to be laid back. So I didn't tell you yesterday. I did tell you they'd probably be up today, but if you'd like them laid back, you can. So. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
So, Mr. President, do we need to do roll call this morning?
We did.
We did. Where was I?
You were present.
I was present?
Yeah, you were present. We did it. You need this again?
Yep, no, I got it.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
just want to make sure before we jumped in.
Yes, sir, we did it.
All right, so I am present. All right. Mr. President, in accordance with Senate Rule 13-5, I move that there be an interim committee bill consent list, which consists of the bills to be read in now by the reading clerk.
Senate File 18, Indian Child Welfare Act Safe Haven Amendment, sponsored by the Tribal Relations Committee. Senate File 28, Federal Natural Resource Management Coordinator, sponsored by the Federal Natural Resources Committee. Senate File 37, Indian Child Welfare Act Delinquency Amendments, sponsored by the Tribal Relations Committee. Senate File 38, Financial Reporting Amendments 2, sponsored by Management Audit. Senate File 60, 2024 Large Project Funding, sponsored by the Natural Resources Fund Committee. Senate File 62, State Parks Recreation Management Authority, sponsored by Management Audit. Senate File 64, Mineral Royalties Proportional Severance Tax Refunds, sponsored by Federal Natural Resources Committee. Senate File 70, Investment and Modernization State Non-Permanent Funds 2, sponsored by Capital Finance and Investment Committee. Senate File 83, Revisers Bill, Management Council.
I'm learning all over again every year. Would anybody like any of these bills removed? Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that Senate File 18 and Senate File 37 be removed from the consent list.
No. Objections ordered. Senator Case. Sorry, Barlow. You look a lot alike.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that Senate File 38 and Senate File 62 be removed from the consent list.
That objections ordered. Anyone else? Okay. First reading of the bills. Senate File 28, Federal Natural Resource Management Coordinator. Senate File 60, 2024 Large Project Funding. Senate File 64, Mineral Royalties Proportional Severance Tax Refunds. Senate File 70, Investment Modernization State Non-Permanent Funds 2. And Senate File 83, Revisers Bill. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson, Baldwin, Barlow, Whitman, Boner, Bouchard, Brennan, Case, Cooper, Dockstetter, Ellis, French, Murphy, Guru, Hicks, Hutchings, Ide, Jones, Kinsky, Bull, Landon, Larson, McEwen, Nethercott, Pappas, Rothbus, Salazar, Schuler, Scott, Steinmetz. President Driscoll.
Aye.
On the consent list, 31 aye. Senate File 28, are there any changes? Bouchard, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Ide, aye to no. Larson, no. French, no. Nethercott, no. Barlow, no. Hutchings, no. Cooper, no. Salazar, no.
Driscoll, no.
Driscoll, no. Beitman, no. Tinsky, no. Ellis, no. Landon, no. Kolb, no. Steinmetz, no. Schuler, no. Brennan, no. Baldwin, no. Dockstetter, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 28, 10 aye, 21 no. Senate File 60, are there any changes? Beitman, no. Bouchard, no. McEwen, no. Nethercott, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 60, 27 aye, 4 no. Senate File 64, are there any changes? Rothfuss, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 64, 30 aye, 1 no. Senate File 70, are there any changes? Closing vote.
Sorry.
Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 70, 31 aye. And Senate File 83, are there any changes? Case aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 83, 30 aye, 1 no.
The following bills having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members. Senate File 60, 2024 large project funding is referred to committee number 2 appropriations. That's a change, Ellen.
Okay, thank you.
Senate File 64, mineral royalties, proportional severance tax refunds is referred to committee number 9. Senate File 70, investment modernization, state non-permanent funds, number 2 is referred to committee number 2, appropriations. Senate File 83, revisers bill is referred to committee number 12, rules. Senate File 28, having failed to receive the 2/3 majority vote, has failed introduction. We're back on bills on normal introduction. Senate File 18, Indian Child Welfare Act Safe Haven Amendments. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to refresh the body's memory, last session, we passed a bill that codified into state law important provisions contained in the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act. And we did so because we were trying to anticipate what might happen with a U.S. Supreme Court case. Little did we know that a few months later, the Supreme Court would uphold the Indian Child Welfare Act. But we had created, in addition to codification of the bill, a task force comprised of various members with expertise in this field of law to come up with potential amendments had we needed to really refine our state law. Even though the stakes were a little bit lower, we did meet twice during the interim and presented our findings to the Select Committee on Tribal Relations. There were a number of ideas provided, but you'll see 2 on your consent list. The first involves safe haven amendments. What is a safe haven? Well, we all care about children, and unfortunately, sometimes parents can't provide care for their children, so they'll take them to a police station or a fire department and say, I can't handle this, here's my baby. We want to encourage that kind of behavior because we don't want other horrible consequences happening for those children. So when that happens, our statutes provide some clarification on what the safe haven provider can ask. For example, if they take a newborn or a child, they can ask the parent or whoever's relinquishing the child, do you know of any medical conditions? And they do that to protect the safety of the child. Looking at this statute, we identified it would probably make good sense if that parent or whoever was relinquishing the child to simply ask, do you know if this child has a tribal affiliation? If that's the case, then the safe haven provider would inform Department of Family Services. Department of Family Services would notify the tribes, and all of those requirements of ICWA would be satisfied. Why is this important? Well, the most contentious ICWA cases we see out there arise when it's late in the process and the child's tribal identity is discovered. The sooner you're able to identify the child's tribal affiliation, the better it is, and the better all of these laws work together. So senators, I'm not asking you to vote for this on final approval. I will tell you this is a result of a lot of work that we spent money on with a task force, with our interim work. And so I would just ask you to vote aye on this introduction vote. Yeah. Oh, I move.
We'll go back and do this, right?
Okay,
Back on.
I will start all over again.
Senate File 18, first reading of the bill. I'm doing everything really to point this year.
Senate File 18, Indian Child Welfare Act Safe Haven Amendment, sponsored by Tribal Relations.
Thank you. Senator Ellis.
Mr. President, would you like me to move introduction on
Yes,
Senate
please.
File 18? I'd move Senate File or introduction on Senate File 18. The last thing I'd add in my remarks, senators, is, this was a task force comprised of citizens. I think it's important when we put these task forces together that we at least consider their work. And so that's all I'm asking for is your I vote on this introduction.
Okay, and before more explanation, real quick, 3-minute time limit on introduction on all of these. I should have done this before I started. They'll all be roll call and it takes 2/3 to pass them. So everybody needs to be aware as you do your votes, it takes the 2/3, 3 minutes to talk. So very good. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introduction vote, Senate File 18, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Whitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky.
Aye.
Aye. Holt. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 18, 31 aye.
Senate File 18, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. Senate File 37, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 37, Indian Child Welfare Act Delinquency Amendments, sponsored by the Tribal Relations Committee.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move introduction of Senate File 37. Senators, this is another bill that came out of the work of the Indian Child Welfare Act Task Force and was approved by your Select Committee on Tribal Relations. You'll recall that ICWA's provisions apply when you have a termination of parental rights or any other kind of action in a state court that could result in a parent losing custody of their child. When we wrote this bill, we have some relationships with both of our tribes located in Wyoming where we notify them in non-termination of parental rights cases, but also in delinquency actions. So these are cases where your parents might be doing all the right things, but you've got a juvenile delinquent. And we work together very closely with our tribes on how those cases should be handled. The problem is those cases aren't covered by the federal Indian Child Welfare Act law. So if you have a Native child whose tribe is located out of state, what our Department of Family Services is finding is they'll contact that tribe as they're required to do in the law that we passed. And the tribes say, why are you calling us? It's creating confusion. It's inconsistent with federal law. We've heard from our Department of Family Services as well as a number of members from the judiciary that this piece is just creating some confusion. So what Senate File 37 would do would just delete or repeal that portion of the statute that requires notification for juvenile delinquency actions, and it holds the rest of it intact. We view it as a cleanup bill, but an important one, so I'd ask for your aye vote.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introduction vote, Senate File 37. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Holt. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 37, 31 aye.
Senate File 37, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. Senate File 38, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 38, Financial Reporting Amendments 2, sponsored by Management Audit.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move introduction to Senate File 38. Members, currently in statute, the last couple of years, we've continued to add requirements for our public entities as far as increasing accountability, fiscal accountability and transparency. Part of their fiduciary responsibility. This is monitored through the Department of Audit. And in the end, when all this information is put together, it comes out as the cost of government report. And we've continued to try to encourage in soft ways through training and other things to have these entities, special districts, counties, cities, comply with our statutory requirements. This bill, as we did that, we created some inconsistencies in the way those things were being applied. Current law says that grants, loans, different things can be withheld from these entities, but it's been done at the behest of individual agencies. And that has led to a lot of inconsistencies, how it's being interpreted and implemented, and therefore whether there is compliance being attained. So this bill, there's actually two repealers, which are the current law, and then there's a new process of doing this, and it basically says you have a responsibility to report. If you don't report within a certain amount of time, then there are financial consequences. Funds can be withheld. As you know, currently in statute, there's also the ultimate, if you will, compliance point, and that is dissolution by the county commissioners for a special district. So this is kind of a replacement of what we have already. What we have already, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like this or not, we need to get rid of what we have. So this is a vehicle to do that. The second thing this bill does is it brings in a good cause for non-compliance. Right now, there is no latitude for the Department of Audit. If they're out of compliance, the process starts, and even dissolution would begin if it was so seen. This allows the Department of Audit and the entity to say, hey, there's a good reason why we cannot come into compliance. Lack of auditors or whatever it may be. So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to kind of provide a background that we have a current law that requires this. It's not being implemented in a very consistent or maybe meaningful way. This is an attempt to try to get that and to provide these entities a process to make a case for not being in compliance through good cause. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration on introduction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introduction vote, Senate File 38. Anderson?
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper?
Aye.
Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky?
Aye.
Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen?
Aye.
Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 38, 31, aye.
Senate File 38, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. First reading of Senate File.
Senate File 62, State Parks Recreation Management Authority, sponsored by Management Audit.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I move introduction of Senate File 62. Ladies and gentlemen, this is also a product of your Management Audit Committee. In the interim, we were assigned to look at opportunities for state lands to generate more revenue. In that discussion, it was discovered while the Board of Land Commissioners certainly can lease state trust lands on behalf of recreational purposes, the department responsible for those things on behalf of the state, i.e. the State Parks and Cultural Resources, did not have the authority to accept those lands and to actually did not have the authority to enter into those agreements with the Board of Land Commissioners. So this bill, whether you agree or not, this is not about disagreeing or agreeing with recreation on state lands, because the State Land Board has that authority. What this is allowing the department to engage with the state lands for recreational purposes on state lands. So, and certainly there's some other nuances about how the funds are being dealt with that we can talk about. But that is the essence of this bill. It's allowing state parks and cultural resources to engage with those Board of Land Commissioners regarding recreation on state lands. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introduction vote, Senate File 62, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. No. Boner. No. Bouchard. No. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Dockstader. Aye. Ellis. Aye. Brent. No. Murphy. Aye. Garup. Aye. Hicks.
No.
No. Hutchings. No. Aye. No. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. No. Cole. No. Landon. Aye. Larson. No. McEwen.
No.
No. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. No. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. No. President Driscoll.
No.
No. Dockstader, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 62, 15 aye, 16 no.
Senate File 62, having failed to receive 2/3 majority vote, Senate File 62 has failed introduction. Folks, we're on to personal bills now. First reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 29, Major Political Parties, State Central Party Voting Members, sponsored by Senator Case.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would move for the introduction of Senate File 29, Major Political Parties, State Central Party Voting Members, and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, as voting is established within our major political parties, each county has equal representation. Each county effectively gets 3 votes, the county chairman and the state precinct committee man and state precinct committee woman. So if you were to kind of play with the demographics of that and think about in terms of being a representative government, it falls short. So we have asymmetric sizes in our county based on population. But most importantly, this bill goes to the number of people of that party who cast their votes for the congressional ticket in any particular general election. So just by way of, if you play with those numbers, the most votes cast in the last general election for the major party, the successful congressional candidate, the most were from Laramie County, who cast 17,539 votes for that county. Niobrara County cast 936 votes for that major party candidate that was successful. That's quite a difference, Mr. Chairman. That's nearly 20 times the weight between the votes cast in Laramie County and the votes cast in Niobrara County. If you just kind of arrange the, if you were to split the counties down the middle and basically take the 12 smallest counties and how many votes were cast from those counties for the last successful congressional race, you would have gotten 32,786. I apologize for that. But in the top 11 counties, you would have got 99,420. Where almost 75% of the vote was cast by those top 11 counties and only 25% by the bottom 12. But based on the voting arrangements that exist now, the bottom 12 can control the agenda of that party. The definition of a small group of people that control an organization is called an oligarchy. That's what this is, Mr. President. It's not democratic. It's not based on population. This makes those decisions be based on population. I ask for your, or I'm sorry, not on population, but on the votes cast by that party for the congressional delegate. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Introductory vote, Senate File 29. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin? No. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? No. Murphy? Aye. Baru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinsky? No. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 29, 8 aye, 23 no.
Senate File 29, having failed to receive 2/3 majority vote, Senate File 29 has failed introduction. First reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 46, compulsory school attendance minimum age, sponsored by Senator Schuler.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move for introduction of Senate File 46, compulsory school attendance starting age. Just to give you a little history, real quick history, compulsory laws were originally put into place to improve literacy and also to discourage child labor practices in the early 19th and 20th century. Obviously, literacy is still the thing that we want to emphasize the most. But this bill was annexed by one of the superintendents in my county. It's seen a few issues with some of the young children who don't begin school in Wyoming until age 7. As we know, most of the parents in Wyoming send their kids to school at age 5 or 6, depending on their birth date. Wyoming requires statutorily our kids to be educated from 7 to 16. This bill really won't change the majority of students that are already enrolled and most of the parents that enroll their kids early. But what we're seeing of those kids that are starting late at age 7, they're already behind. And we know that if our children aren't reading by the 3rd grade, they're going to struggle to stay up. And then that's when the frustration begins. As legislators, we always want to make sure we get our bang for our buck with the amount of money we spend on education. So I think this is one of those tools in the toolbox that might help prevent some of those that are starting late to get a leg up if we can get them to school just a little bit earlier. This bill does not affect parental choice. Parents are always the first and best teachers. If they want to keep their son or daughter home until age 7, they still can. They can homeschool. That exemption exists for anyone, and they can send them to a private school, a charter school, or virtual school. But we want to give our kids every option we can because we know they're all different. 26 states in our country require age 6, and these are the top performing states in every rating system you can find. We often get compared to Utah. They have age 6, so does Florida, Nebraska, Colorado, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Virginia, and many others. These are some of our top performing states. The 10 states who have 7, besides Wyoming, as age 7, have 3 of the lowest performing states and ratings in the nation. So the data supports that starting just a little bit early will help positively affect our students. Last year, I think they only had 40 students that entered 1st grade at age 7, and they had about 340 kindergarten students that started at age 7. So the compulsory laws, they have exemptions. If it would place hardship, there's an exemption for that. There's already exemption for homeschool. There's exemptions if starting school would be detrimental to the child's mental or physical health. So there's exemptions in place. And I think this is just something that might help us get another tool in the toolbox to get our kids reading by grade 3. And I hope you'll support this bill. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Excuse me, Senate File 46, introductory vote, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. No. Beitman. No. Boner. No. Bouchard. No. Brennan. No. No. Case. Aye. Cooper. No. Dockstetter. No. Ellis. No. French. No. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. No. Hutchings. No. Aye. No. Jones. No. Kinsky.
No.
No. Cole. No. Landon. Aye. Larson. No. McEwen.
No.
No. Nethercott. No. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. No. Schuler. Aye. Scott. No. Steinmetz. No. President Driscoll.
No.
No. Closing. Baldwin. Baldwin, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 46. 7 aye, 24 no.
Senate File 46, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority of the vote, Senate File 46 has failed introduction. Senator Landon, could you? Oh, Senator Ellis,
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have privilege of the floor?
you may.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to call everyone's attention up in the gallery today. We have a group of 5th grade students from Pioneer Park, and they're accompanied by their teachers, Ms. Janae Horn, Mary Kinsler, Maddie Kessler, and Morgan Murphy. And I don't say this to all the elementary schools, but 5th grade is my favorite. So welcome to the Senate. And for now, you can still go to start school when you're 7. So thank you.
Next bill for our consideration, Senate File 61. Would the clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 61, Education Charter School Amendments, sponsored by Senator Driscoll.
Senator Driscoll?
I may look like Senator Landon, but I am Senator Driscoll. Folks, I bring you Senate File 61, real quick explanation where we're at. We've all sat through a number of years of these charter schools. We're continuing to refine them and get them where they really well work. I'm proud to tell you that we've got 2 of them up and running this year. We're going to have a 3rd one next year. I thank all of you for all your help in doing this. This bill helps make it a little easier to run and better to run. So what this really does is allows charter schools to be the LEA for purposes of federal state grants. We're kind of taking where they can get some direct access to it. These authorizing board has not worked on this end of it. So for they don't sit on the IEP meetings. It's really a cleanup to make it work better. Makes it where charter schools can actually work directly with the Wyoming Department of Education to apply for funds, which they really can't do at this point in time. They can directly receive funds, and now they will directly report to the Wyoming Department of Education. That eliminates extra work because districts have to do that. So it cleans it up for them. Also ensures district pass-through for the Charter School Foundation payment in timely fashion. We've had a little trouble being ready to get these set up. Really is a hardship on local districts. It gets a little better that way. For the state authorized schools, the WDE is calculating the amounts, send the calculations, both district managed charter schools. That way the districts don't have the extra work to do it. And all they have to do is write the check down instead of doing the calculations, come straight out of the thing. And the last one is it repeals the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board as the LEA for state authorized charter schools. This really is going to make things work a lot smoother. we're already in place on charter schools. I encourage you to follow this through, and we're gonna get to see what charter schools really do in Wyoming. And like I said, it's it's not a normal introduction, but I thank you for your help and ask for your support. Thank you.
Senator Driscoll, would you please move that for introduction?
Wow.
Thank you.
Senators, I would move Senate File 61 for introduction. Ask for your full
Okay.
consideration.
Thank you, Senator. Roll
Thank you.
call on Senate File 61.
Senate File 61, introductory vote. Anderson.
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard.
Aye.
Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon.
Aye.
Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas.
Aye.
Aye. Rothbus. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye. Of course.
President Driscoll, aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 61, 30 aye, 1 no.
Senate File 61, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 72, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 72, Utility Donations, sponsored by Senator Case.
Senator Case.
Hi, Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you. I move for the introduction of Senate File 72, utility donations. And we learned in the last Rocky Mountain Power rate case, that last major utility rate case, which I was a party, that they have a donation program at the corporate level where they provide funding for projects to charity organizations. But the problem is that the company's able to grant the upfront funding, but the installations that are accompanied by it cause costs to be imposed on other customers, so ongoing subsidies over time. So the company gets credit for an upfront charitable donation. It looks good, they're in the paper, but the problem is all the rest of the ratepayers in Wyoming have to pick up the slack for that as it goes forward. I have no problem with the company making corporate donations and working on their image and helping nonprofits out. I have none whatsoever. The problem is that act of charity should not actually be a backdoor requirement that other ratepayers support those activities over time by providing subsidized services. This just says, hey, if you're going to give the donation up front, make sure you figure out how that you don't impose costs on other customers. That's what it does. Look forward to visiting with you about it. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 72. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Guru, aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothbus. Aye. Salazar. I. Schuler. I. Scott. I. Steinmetz. I. Beitman. Beitman.
Oh, Beitman. I don't know where he's at. Excused.
Excused. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Anderson, I don't know. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 72, 29 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 72, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to committee number 7, Corps. Senate File 73, first reading. Introduction, excuse me.
Senate File 73, Concealed Firearms Permit Eligibility, sponsored by Senator Barlow.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, colleagues, I move Senate File 73 and ask for your favorable introduction, vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your work last year on Senate File 120. In the first 6 months, 478 people in the state of Wyoming had their rights restored. I think that is a positive thing. As you pass new legislation, you also find that there's little things that didn't get considered as you did it. And this is one of those bills. This issue was brought to me by a young family man down in the southwest part of the state who had lost his rights when he was much younger. And now 10, 15 years after that, young family, et cetera, he has his rights back, but he found out through in state statute that he was not eligible for a concealed firearm permit because we have a prohibition of that in our statute. So what you'll see in this bill is a very simple bill that says you are eligible for a concealed firearm permit if you've had your rights restored. Currently, the law only allows those that are pardoned. This would expand it to those who were restored, had their rights restored, either through the statutory framework that we established last year in Senate File 120, or when the governor exercises his authority under the Constitution to pardon someone. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask for your favorable consideration of this Senate File 73. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 73, introduction. Anderson. Aye. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow.
Aye.
Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Kolb.
No.
No. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen.
Aye.
Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Kinsky.
Excused.
Excused. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 73, 29 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 73, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to committee number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 74, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 74, Special Districts Reversal of Dissolution for Noncompliance, sponsored by Senator Cooper.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for introduction, Senate File 74, Special Districts, Reversal of Dissolution for Noncompliance. This bill was brought to us by the County Commissioner Association. it kind of lays hand in hand with Senate File 38 we talked about a little bit ago. As we stand today, there are 20 districts, special districts around the state that are in the process of dissolution because they were a little bit late getting their reporting done. What this bill does is it allows the county commissioners in those counties to cease the dissolution process once the district does get in compliance and gets their paperwork in a proper position. Absent of that, the dissolution process has to go forward. And then you have to go through the process of reestablishing that district. These districts include fire districts, rec districts, hospital districts, cemetery districts, whatever it may be in your county. And like I said, there are 20 of them currently in the dissolution process across the state. But we need to give the county commissioners the discretion to stop that dissolution once these districts are in compliance. With that, I ask for your favorable consideration.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 74. Anderson. Aye. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper.
Aye.
Aye. Dockstader. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 7431 aye.
Senate File 74, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee 7, Corporations. First reading, Senate File 76.
Senate File 76, Prostitution Amendments, sponsored by Senator Ellis.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move introduction of Senate File 76. Senators, this is a bill was brought to me by our Human Trafficking Task Force and a number of organizations that advocate against human trafficking. Essentially, it's a modification to our prostitution statutes, which criminalize actual sexual intrusion, but it does not criminalize sexual contact. And so this has been a problem in a number of communities in Wyoming. And so really, this would include manual sexual stimulation included in the definition of prostitution for either providing the service or soliciting the service. It's very straightforward. And the reason I brought it to you, senators, is because these acts generally are an entryway for victims to enter the full-blown world of prostitution and become involved in human trafficking. So it's an important bill, and I urge your aye vote.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 76, introductory vote. Anderson.
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper.
Aye.
Aye. Dockstader. Aye. Ellis.
Aye.
Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. Aye. Guru. No. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 76, 29 aye, 2 no.
Senate File 76, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 79, first reading.
Senate File 79, Malt Beverage Franchise Agreement, sponsored by Senator Barlow.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members, I move Senate File 79, ask for your favorable introductory vote. Members, this is a balancing, if you will, a rebalancing of something that Wyoming has a unique role in, and that is the distribution of alcoholic beverages. While the state handles the spirits and wines, we mandate that beer be distributed in certain manners, with exceptions for microbrews, and they can have craft brewers can have something at their facility or at a satellite, I believe is the two alternates. So if they want to expand, they have to go through some kind of process. And that is a franchise type agreement. So, but however, if you are in one of those franchise agreements, what we do not provide for is a way to get out of those franchise agreements in state law. So then they become stuck. They do not have options, and their business can be, if you will, stranded. Their business model could become stranded. So this bill first came to us in the 2023 legislature, and there was a discussion in committee about the parties will go during the interim, go to work and come up with a resolution to this. This is verbatim the resolution that the parties involved came to. It does, so to be clear, this is their work represented before us based on that commitment they made to us last year. So this does not impair contracts. If a craft brewer is in a contract with someone to distribute, that is different. But if they're doing it under the statutory scheme of franchises, this allows a process to end that relationship, and then our local businesses, brewers in our communities, would have another opportunity to take their business and manage it as they see fit, distribute as they see another opportunity. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is, I think, probably the most patriotic beer freedom act we could imagine. So, here's for beer freedom. Please vote aye on the introduction.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 79, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Whitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstader. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 79, 31 aye.
God bless American beer. Unanimous introduction. Senate File 79, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 80, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 80, Solid Waste Management Definition Amendment, sponsored by Senator Barlow.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move Senate File 80 for introduction. Ask for your favorable consideration. This is more freedom, ladies and gentlemen. And this actually could have gone to the Regulation Reduction Task Force, and I think it would have fit under their guise as well. But what this does is take recycling, advanced recycling, which you'll see a definition for, and removes it from the solid waste requirements of statute. As you know, solid waste, we have all kinds of rules and regulations and management, et cetera, but there are solid waste facilities, and there's interest in solid waste recycling facilities in the state of Wyoming and some of our industrial areas, the northeast and across the southern border along those railroad routes, where we could bring in these materials, they could be processed and then shipped out for, or maybe further manufactured on this facility itself. So what this does is just take those materials and those facilities and say, this is not a waste management system. This is actually industry. And I would hope that we want to encourage industry in our community. So I would act in our communities and state. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration on Senate File 80.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 80, Anderson.
Aye.
Aye, Baldwin. Aye, Barlow.
Aye.
Aye, Beitman. Beitman.
Aye.
Aye, Boner. Aye, Bouchard.
Aye.
Aye, Brennan.
Aye.
Aye, Case. No. Cooper. Aye, Dockstetter. Aye, Ellis.
Aye.
Aye, French.
No.
No. Murphy. Aye, Guru.
Aye.
Aye, Hicks.
Aye.
Aye, Hutchings. Aye, Aye.
Aye.
Aye, Jones.
Aye.
Aye, Kinsky. Aye, Kolb.
Aye.
Aye, Landon.
Aye.
Aye, Larson. Aye, McEwen.
Aye.
Aye, Nethercott. Aye, Pappas. Aye, Rothfuss.
Aye.
Aye, Salazar. Aye, Schuler. Aye, Scott. Aye, Steinmetz. Aye, President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 80, 29 aye, 2 no.
Senate File 80, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Senate File 81, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 81, Hospital or Healthcare District Created Entities Immunity, sponsored by Senator Baldwin.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption on the introduction of bill number Senate File 81. Hospital or healthcare district, created healthcare ventures. We have the situation in northern Wyoming where two separate hospitals have come together to form a venture to create EMS services. Up until now, EMTs working for Hospital A are covered by the governmental act. EMTs working for Hospital B are covered under the governmental act for immunity. But if these two form a venture, it's not clear that those EMTs are covered. And what has happened is that they have to go out and get their own insurance, which is quite expensive. And what this bill aims to do is that when a venture is formed by 100% of governmental entities, that those EMTs or those healthcare workers are then covered by the Governmental Immunity Act. And that's all it does. It just crystallizes and codifies that. And as a matter of fact, we're looking at several of these type things going on in the state where we're going to try to unify some of the EMS services. But that aside, we want to make sure that these folks are covered under the Governmental Claims Act and that they are free from that immunity. And so I would ask for your aye vote on this. It's just a simple bill. It just clarifies and codifies that those EMTs or those healthcare workers are covered as long as it's 100% government owned. It's a venture and it is for healthcare purposes. I would ask for your aye vote, please.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 81, introduction, Anderson.
Aye.
Aye, Baldwin.
Aye.
Aye, Barlow. Aye, Beitman. Aye, Boner. Aye, Bouchard. Aye, Brennan. Aye, Case. Aye, Cooper. Aye, Dockstetter.
Aye.
Aye, Ellis. Aye, French. Aye, Murphy. Aye, Guru. Aye, Hicks.
Aye.
Aye, Hutchings. Aye, Ide. No. Jones. Aye, Kinsky. Aye, Kolb. Aye, Landon. Aye, Larson. Larson, no. McEwen.
Aye.
I, Nethercott. I, Pappas. I, Rothbus. I, Salazar. I, Schuler. I, Scott. I, Steinmetz. I, President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 81, 29 aye, 2 no.
Senate File 81, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 10, Corporations. Senate File 82, first reading.
Senate File 82, Summer Vacation Preservation Act, sponsored by Senator Brennan.
Mr. President,
Senator Baldwin.
just a clarification on what you just read. You assigned that to Committee 10 Corporations. Committee 10 is Labor.
I am sorry. Thank you. My bad. As corrected, Alan. Senator Brennan, sorry about the interruption.
Thank you, no problem. I move introduction on Senate File 82 and would ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fantastic bill for our teachers and our students. What we seek to do with this bill is to preserve summer vacation for our students and teachers. This bill would ask that our schools run from Labor Day to Memorial Day, effectively giving a summer vacation from Memorial Day to Labor Day for our students. We're not going to touch the block grant, so this will have no impact on the funding for our school district. It simply just gives back that needed mental break, that vitamin D and fun for our students, not to mention that our high school students would be able to be hireable for the whole of vacation and our whole tourism season. So I just ask that you would vote aye on this bill.
Thank you. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Senate File 82, introduction. Anderson. No. No. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman.
Aye.
Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan.
Aye.
Aye. Case. No. Cooper.
No.
No. Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. No. Guru. Aye. Hicks.
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky.
Aye.
Aye. Cole.
Aye.
Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. No. McEwen.
Aye.
Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar.
Aye.
Aye. Schuler. No. Scott.
Aye.
Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Cooper. No to aye. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 82, 26 aye, 5 no.
Senate File 82, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 84, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 84, School Facilities Use Fees, sponsored by Senator Brennan.
Senator Brennan, welcome back.
Thank you. I move introduction on Senate File 84 and ask for your favorable vote. This bill came about because we've had problems in our local district where our schools are charging fees that are pricing out our after-school sports clubs from using our public school facilities. So what this bill seeks to do is just ask that our schools, while they can still charge fees, that those fees be reasonable so that our students will have a place to practice their after-school club sports and do their activities. So again, I ask for a favorable aye vote.
Chief Clerk. Call the roll.
Senate File 84, introduction. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan?
Aye.
Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 84, 26 aye, 5 no.
Senate File 84, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 85, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 85, repeal of sales tax on electricity, sponsored by Senator Case.
Senator Case.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the introduction of Senate File 85, repeal of the sales tax on electricity. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a unique opportunity in the fact that Wyoming has a way of collecting taxes off of utilities. Well, it's one of them is a sales tax, which all of us pay on our electric bill. But the sales tax doesn't apply to electricity exports or electricity that's sold to other places. So potentially, we could establish a tax on all utility production and sales. It would be paid for by Wyoming customers and customers in other states. But that would double hit us, Mr. President, because we're already paying the sales tax. Customers in Wyoming pay sales tax and it's on their utility bill. But there's room, Mr. President, get the numbers right. And this bill is contingent on another bill and needs slight leeway because they're tied together. And it is if we repeal the sales tax on electricity, but since we can't impose a tax in the Senate, there's a bill to proceed with our good friends on the other side of the building to impose a tax on all sales of electricity, intrastate and interstate. This bill removes it from intrastate. The net is Wyoming people could actually see their bills go down or not go up. The final numbers aren't in, but they wouldn't see an increase. And we shift the burden of all those. We begin to collect taxes from people in other states on electricity sales and production. The great thing is that we could do this in a manner that helps our local governments by reimbursing them for the sales tax that they won't be getting anymore. So local governments are happy. Wyoming consumers don't see an increase. And we shift tax burdens to the increasing share of Wyoming electricity that goes to the West. Please support the bill. It only would happen if it's contingent on the other bill. And it would be a net win for Wyoming that could carry us for decades to come. Thank you, Mr. President. I hope you'll favorably consider it.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 85, introduction. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 85, 28 aye, 3 no.
Senate File 85, having received a 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. Senate File 87, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 87, Boutique Hotel Liquor Licenses, sponsored by Senator Guru.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 87 for introduction and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, today, currently in statute, a resort liquor license is defined as a 100-unit hotel or resort. What this bill attempts to do, and this comes from working in tourism for a while like I have, a lot of our communities around the state, smaller communities, are starting their own tourism. They have their own local tourism boards, and they're working very diligently to build their tourism footprint in their communities. They're asking people to come in and invest in facilities that can handle these folks that are coming in to visit, that they're promoting. And so the thought occurred that, 100-room threshold is a pretty high one. But yet we know that our local liquor dealers, of which I am one, have investments in their product and investments in their community. So what this bill does is it lowers the threshold to 35 rooms, but asks for a $10 million investment. In other words, if you're a business person, you're coming into a community and you're going to build a small boutique hotel in a smaller community, that you try to build that fledgling tourism account, maybe in the southwest part of the state around an ATV trail or something along those lines, that you put in that investment, that you should be able to have a liquor license. What this does is it allows for consumption of alcohol and sale of alcohol on site by registered guests. It has to have a restaurant component. It has to have room service. This would also allow for mini bars and room and people to enjoy when they're traveling. There's a lot of the amenities that people who travel around the rest of the country expect. With that, Mr. President, I urge your favorable consideration of Senate File 87. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll. Senator Case.
Mr. President, I wish to declare a conflict on this bill. I have a resort liquor license and I have a facility that I could raise the money for, constructed, that is more than 100 rooms. And I wish to let the body know that I have a conflict.
Thank you.
Introductory vote, Senate File 87, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. No. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. Conflict. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. No. Ellis. Aye. French. No. Murphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks.
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide.
No.
No. Jones. No. Kinsky. Kolb. No. Landon. Aye. Larson. No. McEwen. No. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. No. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. No. Kinsky. Aye. President Driscoll.
To do a slight explanation, I'm going to go ahead and vote on this. I hold a liquor license and I can't see where it affects me or my business in any way. Aye.
Driscoll, aye. Closing vote. closing, vote closed. Senate File 87, 20 aye, 10 no, 1 conflict.
Senate File 87, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, Senate File 87 has failed introduction. Senate File 88, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 88, State Law Violations by Counties, Cities, and Towns, sponsored by Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for introduction, state violations, counties, cities, and towns, Senate File 88. It is a very straightforward bill that will implement a program to prohibit Wyoming counties, cities, and towns from violating our state laws or our Constitution. A quick summary of the bill is as follows here. At the request of a legislator, the Attorney General can investigate any ordinance or regulation of a county, city, or town that may violate state law or the Wyoming Constitution. Within 30 days of the request, the Attorney General may make a written report of the findings. If the Attorney General concludes there is indeed a violation, it shall provide notice to the county, city, or town and allow 30 days for resolution of the violation. If the offending county, city, or town fails to resolve the violation within 30 days, the state treasurer shall withhold shared monies in the general fund. Upon resolution of the violation, the treasurer shall restore the shared revenues back to the the county, city, or town. A few recent occurrences across the state, there are examples of actions potentially violations of state law. One of them is a statewide mask mandate on private businesses. Statewide mandate on private businesses banning single-use plastic bags. Another one is citywide mask mandates in public areas. Another one is county judges offering fine reductions to people who receive COVID vaccinations. This is similar to a few other bills here. This gives the citizens an opportunity here, if there is a violation, to go to one of their legislators, and the legislator can bring it to the AG. And it's really a citizen's avenue to protect themselves in a county or a city or a town of something that violates our state law, state constitution. And thank you for your favorable vote. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 88 introduction, Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? No. Nethercott, no. Nethercott, no. Pappas, no. Rothfuss, no. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Landon? Aye. Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 88, 19 aye, 12 no.
Senate File 88, having failed to receive 2/3 majority of the vote, Senate File 88 has failed introduction. Senate File 89, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 89, Veterans Ad Valorem Exemption Amount, sponsored by Senator Cooper.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move Senate File 89, Veterans Ad Valorem Exemption Amount, and ask for your favorable consideration. This bill, the generation of it is, I had a conversation with a Vietnam era vet here a while back, and of course it turned to property taxes. And I asked him if he was applying for his veterans exemption. He assured me he had all $225 of it. I looked into that a little bit to see why that was so low. And give you a little history on that. This exemption was created in 1949. I'm not sure what the exact amount of it was in 1949, but it was directly after World War II, so you could buy a house for a little bit of nothing. The exemption was increased in 1957 to $2,000 of the assessed value. In 2007, that exemption was, that amount was increased to $3,000 of assessed value. And that's where it sits today, is at $3,000 for assessed value, which amounts to a whopping $225 on their property tax exemption. I, for one, think our veterans are worth a lot more than that. I like to stand behind them, show them that we really do appreciate them in the state of Wyoming. And I ask for your favorable consideration to increase the dollar amount of that exemption as it does in the bill to $6,000. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll. Senator Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to declare a conflict on this. 2 members of my household receive these funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Salazar.
Mr. President, I also declare a conflict.
Thank you.
Senate File 89, Introduction, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstader. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Conflict. Aye. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Conflict. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Conflict. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 89, 28 aye, 3 conflict.
Senate File 89, having received 2/3 majority votes, referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 90, first reading of Senate File.
Senate File 90, State Managed Local Government Equity Investment Pool, sponsored by Senator Guru.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President.
By the way, excuse me, yeah, this is 2/3, okay. For legal, okay.
Sorry?
That's all right, that's coming on later, my bad.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move Senate File 90 for introduction and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate File 90 is a bill that allows local government to invest in equities in the same manner as the state of Wyoming. As you recall, in 2022,
the citizens of the state of Wyoming passed Amendment A that allows this investment to change our constitution. This bill just simply gives a method and a means to do it. This bill comes from the folks in cities and towns, municipalities, counties around the state. When I got it, the first thing we did was we sent it over to the building across the way in the office where they take care of the treasury. And we asked the leaders there to take a look at the bill. They provided a number of comments, a number of suggestions, all of which were incorporated into the legislation. I asked LSO just to take their comments and directly put it in the legislation. Does that mean it has the approval of that office? No. But what it means is we asked them to do it. They appreciated the heads up. They put in all the changes that they felt were necessary, and here it lies. There's been some kind of up and down on this and how it's to be enacted, and cities and towns wanted to try to put this bill forward to get input from the legislature, to get it right, to put together a mechanism that has been passed by the people, but now has our stamp on it to produce a favorable outcome for our local municipalities. With that, I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
The Senate File 90, Introduction. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. No. Brennan. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstader. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. No. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Kolb. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. No. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. No. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 90, 27 aye, 4 no.
Senate File 90, having received 2/3 majority vote, is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Senate Joint Resolution 1, first reading of the joint resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution 1, resolution demanding equal footing. A joint resolution demanding that the United States Congress, in consultation with the legislature of the state of Wyoming, extinguish the federal title in those public lands and subsurface resources in this state that derive from former federal territory. To do so in recognition of the sovereign rights of this state as set forth in its Congressional Act of Admission into the Union, and in recognition of the solemn duties resting upon Congress under the admissions, property claims, and guarantee clauses of the Article 4 of the United States Constitution, such that the state of Wyoming shall in due course obtain full admission into the Union of States upon an equal footing with the original states in all respects whatsoever. Sponsored by Senator Ide.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was pretty long. I hardly have to do this, but I got a little speech.
You got 30 seconds.
I moved
No.
that. I moved to introduce SJ1, resolution demanding equal footing. As you all know, we've had a lot of issues this year and with our federal lands. But the 1890 Congressional Act of Admission for the state of Wyoming provides that only Yellowstone National Park is to be reserved to federal jurisdiction. Today, nearly 47% of our state's surface and 69% of its subsurface resources remain in federal jurisdiction, in jurisdictional territory of the federal government. After 134 years of disproportionate and unconstitutional servitude to national interests, this joint resolution is a demand to Congress to obey its duty under Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2, otherwise known as the Property Clause in the United States Constitution, and also its contractual obligation of equal footing under the Wyoming Act of Admission by disposing of the federal title in the public lands of this state, including their subsurface resources, and thereby free them to the rightful sovereignty and jurisdiction of this state. The Property Clause delegates to Congress the power to dispose of public lands and to make all needful rules and regulations. If the power given to Congress is to dispose of territorial and public lands, then Congress has no authority to not dispose of them. It's only common sense. If Congress could do the opposite of what is constitutionally mandated, then the US Constitution ceases to be the supreme law of the land. It becomes nothing more than a list of discretionary suggestions. I have long advocated for transfer of public lands, not only for the sake of our state's economy and self-preservation, but also for the sake of the principles of freedom and independence that were established by our nation's founders. These brave and brilliant patriots knew that liberty could only survive with a restrained federal government. They declared a union of free and independent states. They specifically rejected the idea of one monolithic national legislature presiding over the land of the states. Finally, this resolution is about honoring our solemn oath to support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Wyoming. It is well past time for Wyoming to demand sovereign and jurisdictional equality with the original states and for Congress to perform its duty under the Property Clause of the supreme law of the land. Thank you, and I ask you for your favorable yes vote.
Well done. You have 10 seconds left. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory vote, SJ1, Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French?
Aye.
Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide?
Aye.
Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole?
Aye.
Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen?
Aye.
Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar?
Aye.
Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz?
Aye.
Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate Joint Resolution number 1, 17 aye, 14 no.
Senate Joint Resolution number 1, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, Senate Joint Resolution 1 has failed introduction. Mayor Boner.
May I have privilege of the floor, Mr. President?
Nay.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I'd like to introduce somebody very special who's going to be with us over the next couple of weeks. CJ Toner is a high school intern from Glen Rock High School. Go Herders. And so he's going to be here helping out. And so appreciate his diligence so far. This is a very impressive young man. If you're on transportation committee, you'll see some of his work and probably corporations as well. So excited to have you here. He has to leave, by the way, because he's going on to Washington, D.C. to visit with some of our U.S. senators after he gets done interning here. So I'd like to have you help me welcome him to the Wyoming Senate.
Welcome to the Senate. Reports from Senator Hicks, Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, I was just wondering if the young man would be interested to tell us what his plan is to fix all the problems in Washington while he was back there. Oh, Mr. President, he'd be an old man by the time that happened.
Reports from committees.
February 13, 2024. Mr. Presidential Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 12, Meat Processing Plants, Hides and Carcasses. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Ide, Kolb, Larson, and Steinmetz. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman. February 13, 2024, Mr. Presidential Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 13, Federal Land Use Plans, Legal Actions Authorized. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Ide, Kolb, Larson, and Steinmetz. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman. February 13, 2024, Mr. President's Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 2, Legislative Budget. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 13, 2024, Mr. President's Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 47, Law Enforcement Retirement Contributions. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 13, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 48, Patrol, Warden, and Investigator Retirement Contributions. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 13, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 49, Judicial Retirement Program Contributions. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, and Nethercott. No, Senator Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 13, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 58, Investment of State Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 59, Federal Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund Adjustment. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 13, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 67, Public Employee Retirement Plan Contributions. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, and Nethercott. No, Senator Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to re-refer Senate File 13 to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. It has an appropriation.
Thank you. Without objection, so ordered. Majority Floor Leader Hicks. Is my stomach rumbling?
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Thank you. Any announcements, Senator Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 8, Transportation, will meet tomorrow, Wednesday, February 14th, upon noon recess at Capitol Extension Room W2 and online. Consider the following bills: Senate File 15, Acceptance of Retrocession Federal Military Installations, and Senate File 17, Plane Coordinate Systems Amendments.
Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee 1 Judiciary will get underway tomorrow morning, Wednesday, at 8 o'clock in Room 1 W4 to take up the following bills. We'll take up Senate File 35, Public Records, Department of Corrections Investigations, Senate File 30, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses, the Judges Amendment, and Senate File 36, if time permits, the Uniform Child Abduction Prevention Act. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health and Social Services, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in Capitol Extension Room 6 to hear Senate File 3, State Employee Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS, Senate File 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters, Continued Retirement Benefits, and Senate File 8, Health Insurance for Volunteer Emergency Responders.
Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet upon noon recess at, let's do 12:45 to take up the following bills. Senate File 55, Board of Equalization, questions before the board. That'll be in Capitol Extension Room W6 and online.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. President, your committee number 2, Senate Appropriations, will be meeting at 12:30 in the Joint Appropriations Committee room. And we will take up first Senate File 13, which is a re-referral. And then we will begin our preparations for floor presentation. We disposed of all the bills that were sent to us this morning, so we're ready to get to work on the floor presentation.
Good luck. We're ready for your work. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 9, Senate Renewals Business and Economic Development, will meet Wednesday, February 14th upon noon recess, Capitol Extension Room 4 and online. Hear Senate File 41, Banking Division Clarification, Senate File 42, Low Carbon Reliable Energy Standards, and added to the list, Senate File 50, Unincorporated Nonprofit DAOs. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Steinman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5 will meet today upon adjournment in the Capitol Extension Auditorium and online for a hearing on the environmental impacts of net zero and carbon negative policies. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was going to read that. I'm going to reread it once again. On adjournment, we have the hearing on well, it's actually on adjournment. Hearing on the environmental impacts net zero. You just heard that, carbon negative policies. We also will have at the same time at 5 will be the forest health briefing. That'll be myself and Speaker Summers, and then it's Capitol Room W113. I ask all of you to attend either one or both of these parts of them. These are both of them are real importance to the state of Wyoming. So let's take a look at it. Without that, all in favor of, got to do my script correctly so I don't blow it. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed, no. We are adjourned until what time did Senator Hicks tell us? 2 o'clock.